In this video, I'll share 5 things that you should do in the month of June for your pepper plants. Now, first of all, I do understand that every grower is in a different climate, so your June may not look exactly like ours here in Zone 6B. You may be in a much colder place or a much warmer place, but I've tried to tailor these suggestions, these tasks, to pretty much everyone. You can really start doing all of these things in the month of June. But if you're in a very extreme climate, it's very warm where you are, maybe you're in a tropical place, you can think of this more as a list of tasks for right after you transplant, the month or so following transplanting outdoors. Jumping right in, the first thing you should do in June is establish a feeding schedule for your plants. This is especially important for container peppers. A lot of people think that their potting soil will carry their plants through the entire season. In fact, some bagged potting soils claim that this is true, that it will feed plants for up to 3 or even 4 months. That's really not the case. Peppers can use a lot of nutrients, especially later in the season, but it's important to start early and establish a consistent feeding schedule so that your plants have everything they need from start to finish. I won't go into too much detail on which type of fertilizer to use, but a good balanced all-purpose fertilizer is great. Something with high nitrogen and potassium and lower phosphate is ideal for pepper plants. When it comes to frequency of fertilizing, you can just follow the directions on your fertilizer, or you can opt to just do it on a consistent schedule that suits you, maybe once every week. Some people even feed their plants every time they water. I say just experiment with your own plants and your setup and see what works best for you over time. For our in-ground peppers, we do things pretty differently. We're not fertilizing nearly as often, but there's a lot more prep work before the month of June. Hopefully you've watched some of our other videos about prepping the garden beds, adding compost and lots of organic material, and even some slow release fertilizer to the soil beforehand. And if not, you can always side dress your plants with some of these ingredients during the season. And we generally do this as well, once or twice throughout the year. We'll side dress with some additional compost and fertilizer to keep the plants growing strong. Before I get to the next June pepper task, if you're interested in learning about all of our pepper growing secrets, we have an ebook called Growing Perfect Peppers where we share everything we know about growing amazing pepper plants. It walks you through every step of the process, from planting seeds to transplanting outdoors, watering, fertilizing, and harvesting your peppers. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link down in the description. This next one applies more to colder climate growers. If it's still a little bit chilly, especially at night in the month of June for you, this is something that can make a huge difference on how quickly your plants acclimate outdoors, and that is warming up the soil. Pepper plants grow best with root zone temperatures between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, even if your daytime temperatures are reaching that doesn't necessarily mean that the soil has come up to that temperature yet. So if you measure the temperature of your soil and it's much colder than that, warming up the soil can make a huge difference in your plant's growth rate. The reasons for this are that it improves nutrient uptake and beneficial soil microbes become more active in this ideal temperature range. So if you want to give this a try, how can you actually warm up the soil? First of all, you should measure the soil temperature and see if this is even necessary or worth doing in the first place. And if you want to try it, the first thing you can do is remove any mulch that you have on the surface of the soil. I know we're a big advocate for mulching your plants, but early in the season, you can remove that insulating layer of mulch and allow sunlight to directly hit the soil, which will warm it up much faster. And another thing you can try, it might be a little bit too late in the month of June, but you can cover the soil with either black plastic or clear greenhouse plastic to warm up the soil below. Keep in mind, black plastic needs to be in direct contact with the soil to be effective at actually warming it up, whereas clear plastic allows the sun's energy to get through and form that greenhouse effect underneath, warming the soil very effectively. I'm warming up the soil in one of our raised beds right now for growing melons. There are many other plants that benefit from warmed soil, and peppers are definitely one of them. One last quick thing on soil temperature. If you grow in raised beds, they naturally will warm up quicker. The same is true of containers. This is because in-ground soil is well insulated and it takes much longer to come up to temperature. If you dig down a couple inches below the surface of any soil in your yard, you'll notice it's much cooler. So it may be more worthwhile to use these techniques if you're growing directly in the ground. The next thing you can do in June for your peppers is pretty basic. It's watering, but I want to talk about a specific technique you can use to help your plants establish and become much more resilient throughout the season ahead. Instead of coming out and watering your peppers every single day after you transplant, it's much better to water less frequently, but deeply and for a longer period of time. That way the root systems will be encouraged to grow deeper into the ground, spread out and become larger, forming a much better resiliency against drought. and a bigger root system generally means a bigger plant and a better harvest. Now, this technique is especially important early on. A lot of people assume that since their transplants have such a small root system, they need to keep it really well watered for the first few weeks outdoors until the roots start to spread out. But if you're watering deeply enough and you've mulched your plants properly to insulate them from water loss through evaporation, your plants will have access to plenty of water. And if the area around the root system does start to dry out, your plants will be encouraged to grow those root systems out farther and deeper in search of water. The other benefit here is that since your plants will have larger root systems, you'll have to water them less frequently throughout the year. Since they have access to water deeper down underground, you won't need to be in the garden every single day watering your plants through a heat wave. If the soil is bone dry, of course, you should water your plants. On really hot days, your plants will be using more water, so keep that in mind. If you start to see drooping leaves, or if you notice your potted plants are very lightweight, of course, give them water. They need consistent moisture in the soil to grow well. The next thing you can do for your peppers in the month of June is bottom prune. We made a video last year about how we no longer prune our plants, but that's more about topping the plants while they're young. We definitely still bottom prune, and if you're not familiar, basically all this means is removing some lower leaves on the plant to keep them up and out of the soil. Before you go doing this right away though, it's important to make the distinction between leaves and branches on your peppers. I don't recommend pinching off low branches because those have the ability to grow out and form many more flowers and opportunities for fruits. So it's really just the lower leaves that form on the plant that you're removing, and usually you only have to do this once, maybe twice during the year. I usually wait until the plants are pretty well established. This is a good time to start doing it. We do still have some leaves down lower on this plant, which I can remove right now. When you do this, make sure it's a nice dry day, and you don't want it to be all that windy as well. That can attract some pests that may be interested in your pepper plants. Do it on a nice dry, still day for the best result. Another thing you can do in June is prepare for the onslaught of pests. In June, you'll see beetles and aphids, thrips, caterpillars, cutworms, all coming out to start feeding on plants. So what can you do to prepare for this? First of all, it's important to identify what types of pests are prevalent in your area. So like I said, beetles are a big problem for us here. We have Asiatic beetles and Japanese beetles, also hornworms and lots of different caterpillars. So one of the most effective things that we've found is just covering your plants in some way or another. While this isn't the easiest route to take, it definitely is the most effective. Covering your plants with something like insect netting or even just shade cloth will work. A physical barrier keeping those insects away from your peppers can make a huge difference. Another thing we tried for the first time last season, and it seemed to be pretty effective against beetles and other pests that chew on the leaves, is spraying the foliage with something called kaolin clay. It's basically just a very fine powdered clay mixed with water and sprayed over the surface of the leaves. This is a lot easier than building a hoop structure to cover all of your plants, and it's really a deterrent rather than an insecticide. It's just going to discourage those pests from chewing on the leaves. Basically, it gums up their mouth parts and they're just not interested in feeding on foliage that's been sprayed. Other things you can try are hand picking pests. Really fun work. You go out in the middle of the night looking for cutworms and other nocturnal pests, pick them off and throw them in some soapy water. And I've also seen some success with a trap for nocturnal pests like beetles, where I affixed a light above a bucket of soapy water. And really try to be naturalistic about it, because as many pests as you have fewer beneficials. So if you go in spraying insecticides to try to get rid of your pests, you'll probably end up doing damage to some of the good guys that are really your best bet at keeping pests under control. So plant some companion plants like alyssum and other flowers to attract those beneficials and have a greater biodiversity in your garden. So we'll be very curious to read the comments on this video. Leave us your growing zone and what you're doing in the month of June for your peppers. Let me know how tall they are, and maybe you've already harvested your first batch of peppers, or maybe you're up in Canada somewhere and you're still waiting to get your plants outside. It's always fun to see where everyone's at with their pepper garden. Thanks so much for watching Pepper Geek, and I'll see you soon.